Again, Archbishop, you are the president of the All-Africa Conference of Churches. You were elected as the president back in 1987. You were re-elected just about a year or so ago. Where is the All-Africa Conference of Churches going at this point in terms of all those countries in the continent?
The organization has regained very considerable credibility, and a lot of credit must go to its General Secretary, Yosu Chipenda. It was an organization where the staff morale had gone down quite considerably. We were not viable economically. In fact, we were bankrupt. And now it's turned a corner quite marvelously. We are in the black. This is one of the wonderful few times when black is a very positive term.
Out of the red.
Yes. We've also been engaging a great deal with many of the countries in Africa. We said that Africa has had an appalling human rights record. And we challenged the governments and the peoples and the churches to try to improve that record. We want to participate in the processes of democratization in our continent, in reconstruction. Of course, although we may not have done anything as it were directly in the liberation of South Africa, we have done so by proxy through our member churches.
Yes.
And through our relationships with our friends overseas who supported that particular struggle. And now we want to push very, very much the whole question of the foreign debt, that we want to see this as the new moral issue. Now that apartheid has ended, the world must say we need to look at the whole question of the debilitating effect of the heavy burden that many third world countries have to bear in the debts that they owe. And also to be working for a more equitable, more just economic order in the world.
There are two situations that come to mind, Archbishop, in Africa. One, of course, is Rwanda and Zaire right now, the tension there with the two tribal communities. And of course, Liberia, which of course has just gone through considerable civil strife. How does the AACC speak to that, and what are your observations?
One of the things that has happened in many of these trouble spots is that we have sought to encourage the churches on the spot, the local churches, to be more active, for instance, in providing help for refugees, displaced persons. We were doing that in Rwanda, in Liberia. That is the one thing. The second is seeking to participate in the processes of building peace. I was in Liberia about 4 weeks ago at the invitation of the Carter Center in Atlanta and the Liberian Council of Churches. And our presence might not have brought about peace, but it is saying to the people of Liberia, you are not forgotten. We are in solidarity with you. We pray for you as your sisters and brothers in the faith. And I could also say, coming out of South Africa, that if the apartheid nightmare could end, then your nightmare here in Liberia must end. If what used to be considered an intractable problem, almost insoluble problem of apartheid, if that could now be solved, and in the way that it has been solved, then that must give you hope here in Liberia that your problem could not be intractable. It is going to be solved. And I think that was a message that did seem to energize the people, to give them some inspiration in a situation that is desperate. I mean, it is a situation that fills you with a great deal of despair, I think, when you're there. And I was deeply moved by the resilience of the people. I mean, yeah, it is awful. But when we went to the refugee camps, it was quite wonderful to see that people still have the capacity to laugh. People are clean. They try to maintain the decencies of ordinary life, even in circumstances that were so horrendous. And I mean, I think that was something that I took away. And I mean, it's almost always the case that when you think you are going to minister to people because they are in very difficult circumstances, it's extraordinary how it ends up being they
Who ministered
ministering to you.
Archbishop, one of the things that it seems to me that doesn't immediately come to people's mind when they look at the situation in South Africa is that people like Mr. Mandela himself are people of faith. They were raised in the church. Could you say a few words about the dynamic of faith in the role of these leaders who are now on the scene?
Well, almost all the leaders, not just in South Africa, but in most African countries, even those who claim now to be Marxists or communists, are people who, had it not been for the church, would not be educated. They got most of their education through mission schools, and they acknowledge that. Mr. Mandela constantly, when he's given the opportunity, gives credit, and because we are a multi-faith situation, gives credit not just to the Christians, but to the religious community, the communities of faith, and for the contribution that they've made. I mean, most people are aware that it was people of faith, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Christians, who formed an alliance in the struggle against apartheid. And Nelson Mandela speaks very, very warmly of the ministry that many of them received when they were in prison. He's sometimes a little light-hearted about it, that some people used to attend the services in prison, not so much out of conviction as that it provided them with something different to do. But he has no hesitation in giving credit to the churches and to other religious faiths for the enormous contribution that they have made and continue to make in South Africa.